All right, so I just wanted to give a brief update because I made all the gear videos, and then pretty much the next thing that happened was I changed the kit. Way she goes. So I want to give a quick update on what, there are 4 instruments that I added, so I want to give an update on what those are. And I also wanted to, somebody had asked on one of the videos about how I mount the foot snare. And I explained it in the comments, but I figured it would also be beneficial just to see it in person, because there's a lot of little things that I've done to try and help hold it down, even though it kind of doesn't work. So here we go. So I added, like I said, I added 4 instruments. The first 3 that you're likely to notice are these rototoms up here. I'm going to use these cameras to help illustrate that. I just want to say that all 4 of these instruments that I added, I didn't have to buy them because I just brought them out of storage. All 4 of them came about because I was covering Distant Early Warning, which you should be. That's the Rush cover that should be out by now. And in that song, when Rush wrote that song, Neil Peart was getting into. That was the first time he had ever put Simmons drums, electronic pads, onto his drum set. So there was one section in that song where he had a Simmons drum, and this kit is all acoustic right now. So I was trying to keep the all acoustic feel, but I wanted a sound that was as close as I could get to that Simmons sound, but done acoustically. And I felt like this snare drum right here is the closest sound that I own to being that Simmons sound. This is just a Mike Mangini. It's just a Mike Mangini 10-inch, I think by 6.2-inch Pearl snare drum, his signature model. I got this from a garage sale, much like, in fact, I think I might have gotten it on the same day or on the same weekend that I got the gong. There was a different garage sale where this guy had I think a Champagne Sparkle Gretsch kit, 4-piece Gretsch kit, and he had this Mike Mangini snare drum. And I bought the snare, but not the kit. And I've used it from time to time. On the Herd Mentality album by Herd of Bison, you can hear the snare drum on Searching and on Where's Home. It's also in some of the Allison's All-Stars music. Because again, back during COVID when I had the 360 kit, this was the snare drum that was the main snare drum on that kit. So there's some older music from recorded in 2020 and 2021 where you can hear the snare drum. But you know, if this is the Ludwig snare drum, classic 14-inch kind of sound, then the Mike Mangini snare makes for a good, you know, like a pretty standard sounding kind of piccolo snare, even though piccolo snares are usually thin. But this is just a very classic small snare kind of a sound. And I felt like it was the closest timbre, or the closest timbre match I owned and own to a Simmons tom. So that came back out for that. And also in the intro of that song, because again, going back to that time period when Distant Early Warning was written, Neil Peart was playing the Candy Apple Red Tama kit, and he had, it was 2 bass drum kit with 4 double-headed toms, 3 racks and a floor tom. He had a Tama gong bass drum. He had 4 concert toms. He had a timbali. He had all of these different percussion sounds, and it was only later, once he got into the Ludwig and then the DW eras, that he went to all closed-head toms, and closed-head meaning double-headed toms. And that was when his kit became a little bit more uniform. But so Distant Early Warning was recorded during the time when he had all these percussion items, and some of them are higher than the 10-inch tom. So I wanted that was when I decided to bring the Rototoms back out, because this is just a set of 3, 6, 8, and 10. So I would have access to the 8 and the 6 to be able to go higher than the normal spread that I have. And I was already kind of thinking about doing that anyway, having a higher sound, actually having 2 higher sounds. Just I know I kept bringing it up in all of the other videos, but just to add more dynamics and more musicality. To me, the drumming that's fun to listen to, and I mean really the music that's fun to listen to, is where the musicians have very carefully created as much tension as they can, and then they release it. And one of the ways you can create tension is by having a huge pitch range in a sequence. So going from 10 to 22, I mean, that's a pretty good pitch spread. But going from 6 to 22, I mean, that's an even bigger pitch spread. So that was that. It's been nice to have these up. Obviously, they're pretty high. They're obviously over my head, but it doesn't feel that high to play, because if you notice, right here, my stick is in the center of all 3 of these heads. And if you look at this camera over here, my upper arm isn't above my shoulder, right? So I'm still able to support that motion with my tricep and then down through my back. So I'm not overreaching to play these. And then one other thing is the foot snare. Here, I'll go back here. The foot snare. So the way it's mounted, I'm playing it obviously with the double bass drum pedal, and the left. This is gonna sound counterintuitive until it makes sense, but I'm playing it with the double pedal. The left foot remote part of the double pedal is on my right side, which means that I'm basically, and that's how I'm able to get the snare drum itself out of harm's way, because I'm starting on the remote pedal with my right foot, and then it's trailing off outside the kit from there. Now that double pedal is attached to an LP Gahate percussion bracket, and what I did was on the double pedal, because I'm not using the right foot pedal itself, I don't have a beater there, and I also took the footboard off. So it's just the base plate and the frame that holds the bearings and the springs and the beaters and stuff like that. That's all that's left on the part that's actually mounted to the percussion bracket. I then put some heavy-duty Velcro on the bottom, and I bought some sandbags that I think a lot of recording studios use to prop doors open and such. But they're basically just they're these sandbags that have like a strap that you hold them by, and then they have kind of two weighted areas on either side, and they kind of fold. They're made out of cloth. And so one of them is sitting on the base plate where the footboard would have been. And then the other one is sitting, so the you can kind of see on the camera down here, but you got the front of the pedal where the frame is that's holding the bearings and the springs and the beaters like I talked about. Then you have the snare drum that's mounted on this kind of L arm. If that's the L arm, then the snare drum's up here. And then you have the back of the percussion bracket. And in between, in that space, in that cutout space, there was just enough room to put another one of those sandbags that's about half full, and it's sitting on the percussion bracket itself. And that, hopefully it's just barely enough weight to keep the pedal and the percussion bracket from moving too much. Now, the last thing I did was I built I call it a pedal block. I built a pedal block out of an empty tissue box that I wrapped in duct tape. I filled it with pea gravel, Then I covered at the top with duct tape so it doesn't leak. Then I put some heavy-duty Velcro on the bottom, and then I covered the whole thing with a decorative green marble tissue box cover. And that's what the pedal bracket is sitting up against. And again, all of that is just to make sure that that nothing about that moves. And then actually the in front of the bass drum pedal itself is a short mic stand with Velcro on the bottom to help stop the pedal that I actually play from moving. So that's how I mounted this, you know, that's how I mounted that whole area. That's how I'm attempting anyway to keep it from moving too much. I also have a second one of those pedal blocks in front of my left foot main bass, and I travel with that as often as I can because it really helps stop the pedals from moving, and especially with the Velcro on the bottom, it adheres to the carpet nicely, and it adheres to most carpets really, really nicely. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at. And I hope you guys have been enjoying the covers and all the rest of the videos and everything. So have a good rest of the day.
Across the cities of the plain.